Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Dean Olson. I'm a senior AME in the HIMSS AME, and today I want to talk about the fear of losing your medical and what would Batman do. As always, my standard disclaimer, I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not on behalf of the FAA. Thanks for joining me. Today is May 23rd, 2024. Now you may be aware that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The Aviation Rulemaking Committee, or ARC, produced a report on April 1st that addressed mental health and aviation medical clearances. The ARC identified 7 different barriers for pilots when it comes to reporting their medical conditions. You can see them here on the screen, but today I want to focus on the fear of potential loss of your medical certification. Now, this doesn't only pertain to mental health diagnoses. I've dealt with plenty of pilots who have additional medical conditions and have had the fear of never getting their medical back. So before we go any further, I just want to talk briefly about the biology and the ease of fear. Fear is a primal emotion. It's what protected the human species for millennia. It resides in the primal portion of our brain called the limbic system, and it evolutionarily developed before the critical thinking part of our brain developed. You can see in this diagram where the limbic system resides. It's deep within the middle of the brain. The limbic system is considered to be the anatomic portion underlying behavioral and emotional expression. It plays a role in feeling, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and there's another F word that I'm not going to say here today. It expresses itself through our autonomic nervous system. If you're old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock, they had a song about the nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is involved directly with our fight or flight response. This is a very powerful portion of our brain because it's involved in our self-preservation, and hence it has the ability to override the critical thinking or the rational part of our brain. This key concept is used by advertisers and politicians to influence our decisions. It's that powerful. That override capability makes it very easy to fall into a state of fear and harder to use your critical thinking in times of stress. In aviation, you all combat this by practicing emergency procedures in order to program your initial reactions to override that sense of fear. I would encourage you to use the critical thinking portion of your brain before you rely on fear as your basis for decisions when considering a medical condition that you may have or that may come along. So from a critical thinking perspective, here are some numbers to consider. And I've talked about these before in my other videos. In 2018, there were roughly 400,000 medical applications submitted to the FAA. When all of those were reviewed and all the decisions were made by the FAA, only about 400 pilots were completely denied. That means that 99.9% of those applicants received their medical. Now, not all of those were mental health diagnoses, but I would say that's pretty good odds, because probably anywhere from 10 to 20% of those applicants had disqualifying medical conditions that had to get cleared by the FAA, including mental health diagnoses. I want to show you a chart from the FAA Statistical Handbook from 2022. This was published in November of 2023, so it's the most up-to-date numbers that we have. The chart shows the percent of pilots based on age groups who have special issuance medical certification. Now, if you're not familiar with special issuance, it's a way to get medically certified when you have a disqualifying medical condition. Now, what you can see on this chart is that for the younger age groups, there's not a large portion of the pilot population with special issuance. And this makes sense, right? Generally, younger people are without substantial medical conditions. But when we get to the 30 to 40 year age groups, we can see that the percent of pilots with special issuance increases when we reach the 65 and older age group. We're nearing 20% of the pilot population. Again, that makes sense. Our bodies are going to sustain wear and tear, and we're going to, in general, acquire conditions as we get older. So to provide examples, I want to give you a couple of quiz questions regarding different cases and see whether or not you think the pilot was able to get their medical certificate or not. So here we go. The first question has to do with mental health. Which one or ones of these pilots has lost their medical forever? A pilot who has a history of depression and anxiety while in high school, but is recovered and off medication. B, a pilot who has a history of major depression, suicidal thoughts, OCD tendencies treated with medication. C, a pilot who has a history of anxiety and panic attacks treated with medication. D, a pilot who's arrested for a DUI in the midst of a major depressive episode and a near suicide attempt, who had a plan and who practiced their method of suicide leading up to their near attempt, and who had made all financial arrangements for their beneficiaries. Now you could choose A, B, C, D, or any combination of them. So go ahead, I'm going to give you a second. Think about it. Choose your answer. Okay? The answer is none of them. These are all real cases that I worked through with the pilot. Every one of them has gotten their medical. They were all grounded for a period of time if they needed to recover, and then went through the application process and waited for the FAA decision. My question for you is, does this surprise you? And how do these case outcomes coincide with your ideas of FAA medical decisions? If you have substantial fear, my hope is this makes you reconsider your potential fear and the outcome of coming forward. Okay? One more question. Here's the next group of pilot cases, a more general medical group. Again, which one or ones of these pilots has lost their medical forever? A pilot who has a diagnosis of thyroid cancer that is surgically resected and does not require chemotherapy or radiation. B, a pilot who has PTSD, depression and anxiety not treated with any medications, asthma treated with medication, a food allergy, allergic rhinitis, a pulmonary valve abnormality that's in the heart, and the history of a concussion as a child. C, a pilot who has substance dependence, alcoholism in this case, a heart attack and has a stent placed in the left coronary artery, cardiac palpitations, optic nerve neuropathy, this is a visual disturbance, basal cell carcinoma, which is a type of skin cancer. Or D, a pilot who has substance dependence, again, alcoholism, 2 aortic aneurysms that required 2 major abdominal and thoracic surgeries to insert 2 artificial sleeves into the aorta, atrial fibrillation that was treated with ablation, renal insufficiency, so the pilot's kidneys are not working at full capacity, sleep apnea treated with a CPAP machine, which is a breathing machine, and anemia of chronic disease, so a low blood count. Okay, again, you can choose A, B, C, D, or any combination. So think about it, make your choice. Okay, the answer? None of them. Again, these are all cases I worked with the pilots to get their medicals back. They all got their medical back. So what you can see is that these are all extremely complicated cases from a medical perspective, and every single one of these pilots was able to get their medical certification. Now this is a pretty short video, but I hope just this basic information gives you a sense of ease when it comes to reporting your medical conditions. What I would also like to have you consider is that first, we're all in this together. And what I mean by that is the airlines, the pilots, the AMEs, the FAA, we're all in this together, and I think we all want the same thing, and that is a safe environment for everybody. The next thing I would like you to consider is that the FAA is made up of people just like you and me, and their goal is to help you get a medical, but they want you to do it in a safe manner. And finally, what I would like to say is that we're all on the same team, and I hope this brief talk gives you some insight into that idea. So if you haven't disclosed a medical condition because of your fear of losing your medical, I would encourage you to engage the critical thinking part of your brain and get that skeleton out of the closet so you can clear your conscience and get moving forward in a much more peaceful state of mind. How great would it be to be able to go to your medical without having the fear of hiding a condition? So, what does Batman have to do with all of this? I want to leave you with this thought. This is a road sign that I saw a couple of years ago on a road trip from Wisconsin to Colorado, and I think there's a little bit of truth to this statement when it comes to FAA medical certification. If your screen's a little small and you can't quite read the sign, it says, "Whatever you do today, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old in a Batman t-shirt." My goal with this talk is to give you a little bit of confidence in the system, that if you do have a disqualifying medical condition, and especially if it's a mental health diagnosis, in the vast majority of cases, the FAA will provide you a pathway forward to get your medical certificate, and in the vast majority of cases, you're not going to lose your medical forever. You might be on the ground a little bit while it all gets worked out, but in the vast majority of cases, you're not going to lose your medical forever. If you do have an undisclosed medical condition, or if a new condition comes along, don't be fearful. Put on that Batman t-shirt to gain a little bit of confidence. Come forward and let's get it taken care of. So that's it for now. I've included a link to the ARC report and the Statistical Handbook in the description of this video if you're interested. If you would like to, please subscribe and please invite your fellow pilots to join in the conversation. Subscribers, please send an email or add a comment about a topic you would like to discuss. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time in the AME office.